Okay, we're recording that. Now what we're going to do here tonight is we're going to solder the ESCs and the power module, which is this, the APM and Pixhawk power module, which takes your battery's current, drops it down to 5 volts through here, which is what your flight controller uses, is 5 volts. Because if you supplied your flight controller with the current off your battery, it would fry up in no time. And that would be no good. We don't want to fry up our flight controllers. I mean, they cost a little bit of money. This also sends out signal to the APM's telemetry system, and it'll tell you how much battery life you have and what your voltage is at, stuff like that. So it's kind of handy to have. You don't have to have a power module. You can run your flight controller off the 5 volt BEC built into the ESCs. I don't know what BEC stands for, but 5 volts is what this puts out anyway through this servo lead. The first thing we're going to do is, we don't need to have the double XT60 connectors on here, because what we want is this to be soldered to the board through the wires. I do have extra XT60 connectors, which I could solder some wires to the board and solder the XT60 connector to that and then plug this little unit into that. But the more connectors you have, the more resistance you're going to have, and resistance isn't all that good, and each connector adds a little bit more weight. So this side, I think this would be the male side with the little prongs that stick out. That would be the part that plugs into your battery. Then this side is the female side, which is supposed to go to your power distribution board, which is this. So what we're going to do is going to take some nippers. We're just going to get rid of this. Just like that. See? And then we're going to strip those off. Like so. And by prep work, I mean tinning. Now if you're going to solder stuff, if you haven't had any experience in soldering things before, what tinning means, see this here? I already have some of them done, which is basically I just put a big ball of solder on there for in the future. And I'll show you how we're going to do that right now. So you take your soldering iron. This is just a common hardware store soldering iron. They come pretty cheap. I think it's like $8. And this is some electrical rosin core solder. This is the 375 melting degree temp. You can get higher melting degrees, but then you just have to heat the stuff up more before it melts. So, you know, 375 degree solder. What you do is you touch your soldering iron to the little metal plate there. This side's the positive side, there's a little plus there. And that'll start to heat up that plate. Then as you touch the solder to it, it'll melt into that plate. And you just get a big old bunch of ball in there. And soldering takes a little bit of practice. You'll get the hang of it after a while. But the tinning, the solder somehow makes the heat from the soldering iron flow through to the solder just a little bit easier, or else you'll struggle when you're soldering. If you try just to hold the wire on there and put the soldering iron on there and solder with the wire all at the same time. And we're actually going to tin our wire leads before we try to do this too, and we'll do that here shortly. But first we're going to go through our board, tin up every one of these, and that's just melting a big old ball of solder up in there, just like so. And the least time, or the less time you hold your soldering board down onto the board, the better, because you don't want to melt your board, or you don't want to melt your wires. Like if this was like a circuit board All the solder on everything there. Here's where the battery hooks in, and then each one of these is by each arm that goes out to your ESCs. So I'll set this aside to the second to cool down. It's a 30 amp Simon K firmware G4 series ESC. Now I do have a whole bunch of Dean's connectors, which I could solder the Dean's connectors to my board and plug these in, but like I said, every connector offers a little bit of resistance and it's just more weight and it's unneeded, and to me it just looks like your drone's cluttered up, and clutter I just don't like. So we're going to snip that off. Bye bye Dean's connector. I'm going to strip that, twist up them wires, twist up them wires. Alright, and I plan on running some LEDs and some other accessories on my drone in the future, and I'm really not sure how I'm going to do that yet, but I'm going to solder 3 extra JST connectors onto one of these ESCs, positive and negative, so in the future if I want to plug in an LED system or anything, all I have to do is connect this and I don't have to solder anything in the future. So we're going to do, I already have these 3, these are the female ones, I have them already pre-stripped. What I'm going to do is twist them together. And the solder just push right into there, and you can see it flow and seal all those wires up real nice. Maybe we'll get a little bit more on that one. Alright, so now pin this one up. Let that solder flow in there real nice. Now if you guys haven't had any solder experience before, I suggest taking some wires and just practicing before you go trying to solder something onto your flight controller. I know a lot of you guys on the Drones Plus page have experience, and you guys out on YouTube looking to build your first drone, I mean, this is all stuff that's you're going to have to do if you want to actually get into the hobby, build your own drone, and be successful at it. So I have all my ESCs ready now, and my power control module, which, remember, this side plugs into the battery, your LiPo, and then this side goes to your power distribution board, which is why I clipped them wires up. I think we'll start out with the power distribution board side first. Now, this is the bottom plate of my frame. This is the F550 DJI flame wheel, and I'm going to have all my flight controller, my receiver, and all that on this board underneath the top board. I'm going to put my battery on the top board. The other drone I built, the DJI 450, I have all my stuff on top of the board inside a Tupperware container, and my battery slips in here. But this one, I'm going to do a little bit different. It's my second drone. I'm not going to, I hope I don't crash it. It's only basically being built just for photography, and I see you guys are leaving some comments there. I'll read through those after I'm done soldering this up here, but my computer screen's at a weird angle. I really can't read them at this time. Sorry guys, I hope you guys are enjoying this. But now this is gonna go up to the top board, and I think I'm gonna zip tie this little module up to the bottom part of the frame somewhere. So I think I want both of these leads pointing out this direction. Now I'm not 100% sure on that, but we'll just see what happens here when I come to the build. Like, every build's different, every build's custom, There's no right and no wrong way, really. I mean, you guys get creative. Do whatever you gotta do. But okay, there's already a ball of solder there. There's already a ball of solder on these wires. So when I go to solder them together, watch this. I'll touch the wire with the solder to the big ball of solder. I'll put my soldering iron on top of it. You should see it all melt down in there. Real nice. It shouldn't take that long. There's one soldered connection. Now, blow on it a little bit, cool it down. You don't like your stuff to get very hot because electronics and heat, they're really not friends. You don't want your wires melting, you don't want your board melting. So I'll take the negative, I'll do the same exact thing. Set it on there. Push down with your soldering iron. It's melting the solder on the wires. Now it's melting the solder on the board, and they're all fusing in there together. I mean, you can play with it a little bit too, like this. Every time I touch the soldering iron down, it all melts into a big pool. You can see it up close in person. You might be able to see it on camera too. But this is basically Soldering Basics 101. And now there's a good electrical connection for my battery to connect to my power distribution board. Now, I'm going to lay this down on there, just like everything else. Push the soldering iron down on top of those. And oh, beautiful. Turns into a big ball of solder. Them wires, they're right down in there, covered nicely with all the solder. My fingertips are getting pretty hot right now from holding the wire. There's heat traveling up the wire right now, dissipating all that heat from the solder. Okay, in this board, this power distribution board, which is also part of the frame, is negative. There's a positive, a negative, a positive, a negative, a negative, a positive, a positive, a negative, all the way around. All your reds are your positive, all your blacks are your negative, alright? Do this one now. Just push down, melting, 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 melting. Big pool. Then just hold that wire there until that solder starts to get hard. You don't want to move it or else it'll pull that wire right out of the solder. There's our first ESC done and our power distribution, our power module done there. Hope you guys are learning something off of this. Hold the wire down, push down on the soldering iron, melts down in there. Hold the wire there for a minute. Beautiful. There's nothing better for an electrical connection than solder. I mean, there, the heat's got to go through the solder of the wires, down onto the solder of the board. You want it all to get mixed in there. Swirl it around a little bit. Then I think I'm going to try to add just a little bit to this one. Now, I don't know if this is going to work or not. You want it all to be blended together, remember. You don't want it, I don't want to like just paste this solder on top of the old solder. We'll see how it goes. Alright, I'm pretty satisfied with that.